your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and anyone who curses you, I will curse them. And all the people on the earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Chapter 13. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock, in silver, and in gold. 5. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herds and the herdsmen of Lot. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also in the land at the time. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling amongst you, or between you and I, or between your herdsmen or mine, for we are brothers. It is not the whole land before you. Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right, and if you go to the right, then I'll go to the left. And Lot looked up and saw that the whole plains of the Jordan were well watered, like the gardens of the Lord, like the lands of Egypt toward Zoar. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after they had parted, lift up your eyes from where you are, and look north and south, and east and west. All of the lands that you see, I will give to you and your offsprings forever. The text has been read for your hearing, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about Abraham's journey. Most of us know Abram as being a faithful man. We know Abram as being one who was close to God, one who had God's favor, and God moved mightily throughout his life. But Abram didn't always do exactly as God told him to. You know, sometimes we can be faithful, but still miss the mark. Sometimes we can set out with good intentions and still not do all that God called us to do. Not that we're trying to be spiteful, not that we're trying to be disobedient, but sometimes situations and circumstances just cause us to make decisions contrary to what God has called us to do. In this morning's text, we see Abram first receiving his call from God to move from a place. Chapter 12 starts off and it says, the Lord had said to Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to a land where I will show you. And then verse 4 says, Abraham left as the Lord had told him, but he took with him his nephew. Now, according to verse 1, he was supposed to leave his kinship, leave his family, leave the land. You know, there's some people, places, and things that we've got to leave behind. Amen. But instead, Abram took with him a lot. And today I want to talk about dealing with the lots in your life. Many of us have lots in our life. You say, preacher, what's a lot? Well, if we look at Abraham's situation, Lot and over again. God has brought you to those who are able to medicate that symptom, those who are able to cure that symptom, those who are able to tell you what you need to do and the changes you need to make in your life to relieve you from that illness, yet you hold on to that lot and that very thing that causes your affliction. You won't let go. I don't know what your lot is. But what I know based on this text is that we've got to leave our lots behind. In order to follow behind God, in order to do His will, in order to walk in obedience, in order to be in right relations with God, we've got to leave some lots behind. You might say that your lot is a loved one. Maybe it's someone who's close to you, but the sins in their life is affecting your worship. It's affecting your praise. Your mind is so caught up, wrapped up, and tangled up in their behavior that you can't get close enough to God because they're blocking your blessing. Your lot may be your very own children who have grown up and become disobedient, doing everything that they're big enough and bad enough to do, but because you love them, you hang on to them and allow them to cling on your tail. But it's keeping you from getting closer to God. I don't know why Abram took Lot with him. I know that Lot was his brother's son. Maybe Abram felt guilty because Lot was orphaned. Maybe he felt guilty because Lot didn't have a father figure in his life. Maybe he felt that he had to take the place, or maybe he had to make it up to his brother. I don't know why he did it. Perhaps he had good intentions, but the problem is it was disobedience to God. You may have good intentions. You might be trying to help that wayward brother. You might be trying to help that sister that's gone astray. But if God said take your hands off, take your hands off. If God said to remove yourself from that place, move yourself. There are some people, places, and things that we've got to leave behind. There's some lots in our lives that we've got to let go. There are some things in our lives, some people in our lives that don't mean any good to us. They just want to cling to us. They want to suck the life and the power and the energy out of us. And we sometimes allow it. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's because you know that secretly you're just like they are. And you don't want anybody to know it. Maybe they know your deep, dark secrets. Maybe you got something to hide. And you're afraid that they might ruin your reputation. My question is, what is more important, your reputation or your obedience to God? What is more important, your loyalty to the lots or your love of Christ? What is more important? Sometimes you've got to spend some lonely nights in order to be obedient to God. Sometimes you've got to not make some phone calls. And sometimes you've got to turn over the plate. Sometimes you've got to lock the door on old relationships to please God. If we look at the text, God gave Abram instructions. He said, leave your country, leave your people, leave your father's household, and go. eventually they're going to get on your last
Amen.
nerve. Eventually, the smiles that they have on their faces are going to turn to frown. Eventually, their true identity is going to show up. They can only pretend for so long, but eventually their intentions will show up. All along, Lot, I believe, was just waiting for old Uncle Abram to pass on. You see, Abram and Sarah, they didn't have any children. So the next relative would have been Lot. end our future. They can postpone our destiny. They can block our blessing and keep us from getting what God would have us to be, the lots in our life. Think about it. You've got any lots in your life, any place that you wanted to be, anything that you wanted to do, and because of situation and circumstance, you couldn't do it? Any promises God made to you, any covenants that you broke because of someone else, any sin you committed because someone persuaded you otherwise? Any lots? We've got to deal with the lots in our lives in order to move on. We've got to resolve the issues in order to be in right relations with God, in order to restore the covenant, in order to go forth in the desires that God has for us, in order to complete the plan. There's some things we've got to get rid of. Some people we've got to let go. Some decisions we've got to make. And it continues, and Lot looks up and he sees the best of the best. And he claims it for himself. And he leaves the leftovers to Abram. Now Abram is receiving whatever he could at the mercy of Lot. Whatever land that Lot does not want is now his. Not what God promised to him, but whatever Lot does not want. The lots in our lives are selfish. They don't think about us. They think about themselves. They think about what they can get, what's best for them. You would think that all Uncle Abe had done for him, that what he would do now is he would give him the best. And he'd allow him to have first choice. Because everything that he received was because of Abram. Everything he had was because of the mercy of his uncle. And you would think, but the lots in your life don't care. The lots in your life are selfish. All they want is the best for themselves. And it continues, and it tells us that the two men parted company. And Abraham lived in a Canaan while Lot lived near Sodom. But the story doesn't end there. If we go just a little bit further, it tells us that after they parted company, after he settled that issue, after he got rid of the Lot in his life, after he let it go, it said the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted, lift up your eyes from where you are. Now that you got that Lot out of your life, now that you got rid of that issue, now that you dealt with the problem, now I into any new areas? Is there anything in your life right now that you know would be different if you dealt with some issues? Anything that you've been putting on the back burner and said, one day I'll deal with that, or one day I'll get rid of that, or one day. Today's the day. You see, we don't know the day nor the hour that is coming. But we know that if he spoke something into our lives, then that's what he would desire for us before we close our eyes. Let this be the day when we get back on track and start walking in our destiny. Let this be the day when we stand up for ourselves and stop allowing people to take advantage of us. Let this be the day when we become an Abram who's obedient to God. Turn your back on the naysayers. Turn your back on the leechers. Turn your back on the moochers. Turn your back on all those who don't mean you any good. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you don't want the best for them. But it means that you want to be obedient to God. There are some people, places, and things that we've got to leave behind. There's some people that we've got to take our hands off in order for God to put his hands on. Later on, we know that God rescued Lot. But if Lot had stayed with Abram, Lot would have been dependent and codependent on Abram, rather than learning to love the God of Abram. Some of the Lots in our lives are codependent because we've made them. We've taken care of their every need, and we've never allowed God to take care of them. They haven't gone without anything because we've always supplied their needs. So they don't know how to call on God for themselves. We have created some of our own lives, and we've got to fix that thing. We've got to deal with the lies in our lives. I just come by to tell you that it is time to settle that thing. It's time to deal with that issue. It's time to resolve that pain. It's time to get right.